Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Jeff, and on today's episode with Living with Blank, I have Christine from MyIBSLife. Christine will share her experience living with IBS or Irritable Bowel Syndrome. Welcome, and thank you for joining.
Hi. Oh my God. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So pretty much let's just start from the beginning and just tell me when you first had symptoms with IBS.
Sure. So my journey with IBS started back in 2006. It's been a long road, a long journey. Basically, I had just started seventh grade, and I guess back then I didn't like washing my hands because I ended up getting strep throat like 3 or 4 times within like 5 or 6 months. Um, and so I was constantly not only sick, but on antibiotics. Which, we take antibiotics to kill the bad bacteria in our bodies when we're sick so we can get better. But overuse of antibiotics can start to kill the good bacteria in your digestive system. So that's what happened to me. And of course, back then, I didn't know that's what was happening. All I knew was that I felt like crap all the time. I constantly had stomach aches. I was constantly burping. I was bloated, and not just like, oh, food baby. It was like I looked
Mhm.
pregnant, and it was like so painful. And then, of course, the more disgusting stuff of having, switching from having really bad diarrhea to then not going to the bathroom for 10 days. And it was just like awful. And I remember I started to miss school all the time. It started with missing 1 day a week, then 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. And then it was just trying to go in once a week. And I started to see my pediatrician all the time. And he ran whatever tests he could. He did all the blood work, and we tested for mono and like weird stuff like that. And everything kept coming back normal. So he started sending me to specialists once I had started losing a ton of weight. I literally looked like skin and bones. You could tell I was sick. So he sent me to my first gastroenterologist. And at that point, I had voluntarily gone on a gluten-free diet. Back then, no one talked about IBS or really any gut disorders, but my mom had Googled some stuff, read some stuff about celiac disease, which is when your body can't tolerate gluten. We thought that might be what's going on. So I was gluten-free. I went to this new gastro, and he also thought I might have celiac disease as well. But in order to test for that, you have to have gluten in your system. And basically he told me, I want you to go home and eat as many like bagels and cookies and pasta for the next 2 weeks and then come back. And yeah, that sounds amazing. But when you think gluten is murdering you,
Yeah.
that's kind of traumatizing. And you're like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to be so sick. So I remember I was like crying and I was like, I'm not doing it. And he kind of just like gave up on me and was like, well, then I can't help you. So then I went on to a new gastro. And from the beginning, he was also not the best. He was very dismissive. I was just another 13-year-old girl in his office complaining about having tummy aches. But he was like, you know what, let's go through with a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. Let's rule out like anything serious. So I went through with all of that. And then my results came back and he had me and my mom come see him again. And I remember like he just wouldn't even look me in the eye. He was only like talking to my mom. And he was like, all of her tests came back normal. She looks perfectly fine. He said something along the lines of like, I'll give her the honor of having irritable bowel syndrome because I can't find anything else. But I truly think she's just anorexic. And instead of wasting your time at the gastro, you should just put her in therapy. So
Wow.
that was the beginning of it all.
Yeah, that is intense. So how long until was that pretty much the first time you were diagnosed? And then after then, did you see another doctor or
Yeah, so I officially got diagnosed in 2007. It was like spring of 2007. After that, it's honestly a blur. I know I kept going to doctors, especially like my pediatrician, because he was just my like, call it
yeah.
a day when I don't feel well and don't know what else to do. I remember just always going for blood work and stuff. But otherwise, I have a new gastro now that I only started seeing probably 5 or 6 years ago. But between like, I would say like 2009 to then, I was just kind of trying to figure out things on my own because I had gotten so frustrated with
Uh-huh.
other doctors.
So what things were you like trying out on your own? Because I know there's a lot of kind of things they say you can do to help the symptoms. So like what were some of them?
Sure. So especially like I talked about, like we had tried the gluten-free diet.
Yeah.
I had done that a few times and I would, stick with it for like 6, 7, 8 months. And it would kind of help, but not enough to where
Yeah.
I wanted to stick with it. Um, and then I just, we started reading up on other types of diets and stuff. And like none of the diet stuff really seemed to help me. I've tried some medications throughout the years from doctors. Some help, but it's just kind of putting a band-aid on the bigger issue. So nothing like that has really been like a cure-all. And then like just, other simple things, trying to manage my stress, whatever that
Yeah.
means, exercising and really trying to figure out what my triggers are, whether it's food related or not. And just like keeping that in mind like every day.
So is this still an issue? Kind of, there's no real, I mean, I know there's no real cure, but have you not really found something that is like perfect for you?
Yeah, I would say so. I still definitely deal with my IBS every day. I've definitely found things that help me manage the pain and cope with it. Again, I still kind of think there's still just like band-aids. And
Yeah.
there are probably certain things I could do and I could try that would make like a lasting impression on my IBS and make me feel better. Which maybe I'll do like in the future, but right now,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's definitely still an everyday issue for me.
Yeah. What are some of the like more intense things that they say that could kind of cure it? Or just, I assume they're probably just a little more dramatic than just changing your diet.
Yeah, so I know personally for me, my biggest trigger with anxiety or with IBS is anxiety. So
Uh-huh.
I think what would really help me is probably like going to see a therapist and like really, seeing a therapist that works with people with chronic illness and like working through
Yeah.
the more mental side of it. And maybe that would be a better fit for me.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of similarities between IBS and alopecia just from hearing this, just on how they kind of just say the same thing. They said the same thing with how your diet affects, and I went gluten free, dairy free. I even did like the autoimmune protocol diet for a bit, where you pretty much just remove everything.
Yeah.
And then they say the same thing with like stress, and I would say stress definitely plays a part with my disease. I know there was times where I was more stressed where I did lose hair and then whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, it's very interesting that there are just similarities between, even though they're very different between the two.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of issues people deal with. It's a lot of like manage your stress, manage your
Yeah.
anxiety,
It,
watch what you're eating, and it's like we get it.
yeah,
It's easier to do
exactly.
that than to say it though.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's like the same thing where you try it, but it's not really like it helps a little bit and might help one week and then next week it doesn't. And then you kind of get frustrated with it.
Absolutely.
So, like, what are some of your symptoms with IBS? Because I know it's different for other people. I know some people are, you said yours is kind of something you deal with every day. So, kind of
Yeah,
just like talk about your symptoms and if there's
sure.
like, yeah, exactly.
Sure. So I would say my main symptoms now are gas, and I deal with like chronic nausea. A little controversial whether that's an IBS symptom or not. Some people say it is, some people say it's not. But I truly believe it is part of my IBS.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, definitely gas, nausea, and normally I'm IBSM, which means I switch between having bouts of bad diarrhea and bouts of constipation. But I more lean to the side of constipation. So that's definitely one of my symptoms as well. And then some of the more underlying symptoms that people don't always think about. I have really bad fatigue a lot. I'm always low energy,
Uh-huh.
tired, and my mood gets affected a lot by my IBS. You know, sometimes I'm more of a downer, or if I'm feeling really good, then my energy's like super high. So those are like my main symptoms, right?
Yeah. Would you say kind of the energy, like your levels of energy depends on how intense the symptoms are?
Definitely. It's like if I'm going through a really bad flare, in like as I'm going through it, my emotions are so high and my adrenaline is so high because my anxiety is pumping and my body's like going through hell, that once I'm done like really feeling like crap, I'm so exhausted that my energy is completely depleted.
Yeah.
And it'll take a few more days once I start feeling better to get it back up. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
Does it affect your sleep at all?
Absolutely. It's funny because it seems like people's IBS symptoms, for each person, their symptoms come at like a specific time of day. A lot of people experience having a lot of pain when they first wake up. For me, it's the minute my head hits the pillow. I'll
Uh-huh.
be fine all day, and then I'll get in bed, and suddenly I feel super sick. And I was in this really horrible sleep pattern just even a few months ago where I was pulling all nighters all the time. I wouldn't go to sleep till 9 a.m.
Wow.
In return, having bad sleep patterns can make your IBS worse and can make you flare more. So it definitely does affect it, but I feel like I've gotten a little bit more control over it.
Uh-huh. What would you say are some of like, do you know what your worst like triggers are for your IBS?
Yeah, so I would say definitely, like I said before, anxiety. If I'm super anxious or just like highly emotional, like if something really horrible happens and I'm super sad about it, like it'll kick in right away. In terms of food, I have like it's hard because it truly feels like anything could set me off most of the time.
Yeah.
I feel like I have like a few main things I stay away from. Like onions are a no for me, garlic, tomato sauce, like really acidic type of things.
Uh-huh. What are some of like the diets you've tried since you've had it pretty much?
Sure. So really the only one I've seen through was the gluten free, like going
Uh-huh.
gluten free, which is funny because back then when I went gluten free, like it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
So the selection of food was so small and it was all garbage. It was like literally eating cardboard all the time, which is great now that it's kind of become more of a thing.
Yeah,
A lot
definitely.
of great food now. So I've done that. I tried dairy free for like honestly like a week. I was like, you know,
Uh-huh.
I'll just deal with the pain. I can't do this.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And then there's a diet called the low FODMAP diet.
Yeah.
A lot of people with IBS try, which is an elimination diet. You eliminate a lot of foods from your diet, and then you slowly start introducing them back in to see what you can and can't tolerate. I specifically have like never done it hardcore. I also was never really instructed to by a gastro.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I do eat. I order meals from this company that sends low FODMAP meals to your door. So I'll eat them sometimes, and yeah, those definitely feel better in my stomach usually. But I've never like really thoroughly done the low FODMAP diet.
Uh-huh. So like what would you say like you eat kind of for like your entire day, like your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and like snacks and whatnot?
It's funny because I always get questions like, "Can you do like a what you eat in a day?" And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I am
exactly.
not the role model you were looking for. Like I truly eat what I want, and like I said, I deal with the consequences later. So
Uh-huh.
obviously, I stay away from my triggers. But I would say like a normal day, usually I wake up and I'll eat like I'll make myself a breakfast sandwich, which is usually just like bread, like Taylor ham and cheese or something. And then for lunch, I'll have, I don't know, like rice and chicken or pasta or something. And then for dinner, I'll eat like a salad with protein. Um, In terms of snacks, I am such like a sweets lover. I still eat cookies. I still eat candy. It annihilates me, but I don't care. My love
Uh-huh.
for it overpowers it. So yeah, that's honestly normally what I eat in a day. I'm not too picky about it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure doing it, like some of these diets are very stressful. So it's like even stick on the diet, you get the stress from the diet. So
Yeah, no, that's a very good point actually, because going back to the low FODMAP diet, some people swear by it and they're like, it was the best thing that ever happened. It really helped me, which is amazing. But I've also heard the opposite, like you were just saying, that
yeah.
it has actually made some people more fearful of eating, and it's made exactly like it stressed them out and made their symptoms worse. So yeah, it's totally individualized for each person.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I felt like when I did these intense diets. It was just like you were so stressed about eating things, and it just got to a point where it wasn't worth it. And
Yeah.
like I moved home where I live with my parents, and like my mom cooks, and it just got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm not going to eat
Yeah,
ridiculous, like specific foods. It
absolutely.
wasn't showing the benefit of doing
Right. And also it becomes a thing of like convenience too. Like,
it. Exactly.
it's like when you're living at home, like I lived with my parents a few years ago, and like if my mom's just gonna make dinner, like that's what I'm gonna eat.
Yeah, exactly. Is
So
this like, so, I mean, you're not as strict. So like when you go to restaurants, like this isn't really a big issue, or is it an issue? What were you
so
saying?
um going out to eat is it's more of like a anxiety issue, because at least when I prepare my food, or I live with my boyfriend, if he prepares my food, we both know like I can't have certain seasonings, or
Yeah.
the triggers I just listed, like onions and stuff like that. But when you go to a restaurant, it's a little more risky, because sometimes you don't even know they sauteed it in onions or something, and then all of a sudden I'm super sick an hour later. Um, so to me, going out to eat gives me a lot of anxiety before we even get to the restaurant. I'm the type of person that's on Google 3 hours beforehand picking
Uh-huh.
out what I'm gonna eat. Um, and even when I go to restaurants, I'm a lot safer about it, and like a lot more careful about it. Like I'll just order a salad or something super super basic to hopefully not get sick.
Yeah, I realized when you said onions and garlic, like almost every restaurant cooks with garlic and I mean onions also, but
You
like
know why? Because it tastes amazing.
obviously it's like the same thing with butter. Like,
Yeah, but unfortunately my body just rejects it.
yeah, exactly. So like there's the food part and then there's also the stress part of it. So like what are some things you've done to kind of like manage your stress? Have you done like meditation or like yoga and that sort of stuff?
So I feel like I've tried the meditation thing. Honestly, I think I am just too much of an anxious person to
Uh-huh.
successfully meditate. I should probably like give it another try. I especially when I was first diagnosed with IBS, I was like a competitive dancer. I was an athlete, and I think that really did help relieve a lot of stress and everything. And then as I got older, I kind of got lazier, and so I'm trying to hop back into that now. And I've realized now every morning when I get up and I work out, I feel so much better mentally and physically through the day. And that's even what has helped my sleep schedule again. So I definitely think working out has been a great thing for me.
Yeah, from what I've read on like IBS and other bowel disorders, they say pretty much exercise is a huge help. I mean, it's not surprising. There's only
Yeah,
benefits of exercising pretty much.
it's interesting though, because definitely like exercise is definitely great, and like it tells you to do that like everywhere you look. But with IBS, it's kind of tricky sometimes, because certain exercises, depending on what type of IBS you have, whether you're more prone to diarrhea or constipation, certain exercises might cause you to flare. um,
Interesting.
yeah, so if you're doing like really high intensity running or cycling or dancing, um, that gets your blood flowing and your intestines going, and it could cause you to have a flare.
Uh-huh.
So exercise has definitely helped me, and it's taken me a while to realize what works for me. But it can be definitely tricky for people to find what type of movement works for
Yeah. So you said you're mixed. So like between the two, would you do different stuff when, like, I assume when you're constipated or diarrhea, you would do kind of almost the opposite, right? Or
Yeah, definitely. So when I'm in like a really bad IBSD flare, I kind of like I kind of let my body rest for a day, meaning like I don't exercise, I don't really eat, or I'm like super careful about what I'm eating. I lay around all day, like I kind of just like I'm like sedentary. I like let myself rest.
Mhm.
But when I'm constipated, um, you know, also when I'm having IBSD, I'll take something to stop going to the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but when I have IBS-C, you know, I want to be more active. I want to get things going again through exercise or whatever it might be. I'm drinking more water. I'm eating things that I know are going to make me go. So yeah, I definitely have like different techniques for whatever I'm dealing with.
Yeah. Do you take like different types of medicine?
So I really only have two prescriptions right now. I have a prescription for an antispasmodic to help with like intestinal cramping when I'm flaring. And then I also have a prescription for Zofran, which is an anti-nausea medicine. I don't take them every day. It's kind of just like as needed.
Uh-huh.
That's about it.
So you said it's mainly at nighttime for you, but like, does it ever change where it's kind of in the morning? Like how, like your day to day, is it kind of different or?
So for the most part, it's the same because usually, like I'm in a pretty regular routine right now.
Uh-huh.
And IBS loves routine and loves knowing what's coming next, what you're eating next, what you're gonna do next. But so if I like switch up my routine for a day, so I guess as an example, like during the weekday, I wake up at 7:30, I go to the gym, I come home and I eat right away, and then I do work, blah, blah, blah. But on the weekend, you know, I stay up later because, you know, especially pre-COVID, you know, we would go out or have
Uh-huh.
friends over, and then I would sleep in, and then I wouldn't work out, and then that would completely throw off my body, and then I would have symptoms because of that. So as long as I'm in routine, I can pretty much gauge when I'm going to feel like crap. But if I
Yeah.
go off, then it becomes a little more random.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like what would you say is kind of like the most difficult part of living with IBS?
That's a good question. Um, for me, I would say it's just I guess this kind of goes against what I said, but like just said, but like the unpredictability of it, because you can try your best to take control of it and you can have this routine that you do every day to keep your body in line and kind of know when you might feel like crap or what food might make you feel sick. But sometimes IBS just likes to pop out of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
So it definitely gives me a lot of anxiety, like I've been talking about. So anytime I have to leave my house, I get really anxious that I'm going to get sick somewhere. Um, Anytime I'm out with friends or something, all I'm thinking about is my body, and if I'm going to be okay, if I'm going to be able to eat with them and stuff like that. So I definitely say is the unpredictability and the anxiety of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be very tough when you go to like a friend's place for dinner or whatnot, and just I'm sure people like try to be nice and do stuff, but like they don't know they you can't have garlic or something. I'm sure.
Absolutely, that has happened more times than I can count.
Yeah, I mean, when I was on my intense diet, I mean, I remember I wasn't even black pepper for a bit, and just like that just throws everything off. And
Yeah.
I remember that's an issue. So like, yeah, so like if you celebrate certain like holidays, is this like kind of like how does your family kind of deal with you living with it?
Sure. It's funny and it's not funny, but like my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my brother, my boyfriend, like it's not if I show up to a holiday or a celebration or something, they don't think it's weird if I don't eat certain things or if I don't eat at all. Like if it's a day I don't feel well, like they're so used to it. It's just like,
Uh-huh.
okay, anyway. But if it's like my more like full family, aunts, cousins, whatever, and then if like friends or whatever, it becomes like the center of attention, unfortunately. And because everyone loves food, everyone loves to eat. It's such a common thing, but not for me. So people are like, oh my God, why aren't you eating? Like, you need to eat. And it's like, just, it's okay. I'm good. Worry about you.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of similar, like when people like don't drink at functions and then they're always like, why don't you drink and stuff like that. It's almost like they kind of take it personally even.
Yeah, and I've had that happen where I've shown up to I think it was like Easter, like when I first was diagnosed, and my aunt, like, you know, made a really great meal for Easter, and I was terrified to eat it, and in front of the whole family she's like, I slaved over all day, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like it's awful.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So like, would you say, I mean, it sounds like there's like the stomach issues, but then it also sounds like kind of there's a stress around it. Like, which one would you say is kind of more difficult, kind of like to live with, I guess?
For me, it's definitely the mental part of it. I think if I could get control of the anxiety part of it, I would honestly cure like 90% of my problems.
Yeah.
It's like I said before, it's just constantly being worried about getting sick and where you're going to get sick and can you go home and are you going to let anyone down? It's like, and just having those thoughts will make you flare. So it's definitely more mental
Yeah,
for me.
definitely. I mean, it's the same for me. Now I'm at a much better point.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the past, I had like now I have no hair, but back in the past, I would have kind of just like spots.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely was more of a mental thing for me, where it's kind of like, oh my God, someone might see this spot. Like, I can't do this thing. Someone might, it was more just a mental battle with myself. And kind of everyone I speak with, it's kind of almost everyone says the same thing. Like, it almost seems like most diseases are more mental
Yeah,
than actually physical.
absolutely. I would believe that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I will say I'm a very big proponent of meditation. And I
Okay.
was like, there was definitely a turning point, like when I started meditating every day. So I will
I'll
suggest
have
that.
to give it a try again and like
Yeah. I mean, all you got to do is start off with like a few minutes, 5 minutes. So I definitely will suggest that to you and anyone listening as well. But I mean, it really is. It's
yeah,
each person's so different. So it really is whatever works for you. Because
right.
it could be the same thing where if you meditate, it could be more a stressful thing, like, oh my God, I have to meditate now. And it's like, it shouldn't be like that.
Right. I think that was part of the problem too, was I was more thinking of it as like a chore I had to do.
Uh
Um,
huh.
but I think like if I would just get into a routine of it, then I would actually start like enjoying it. Like,
Yeah. So I know there's obviously a big connection with like the gut and like it's the same thing with alopecia. They do say there's so many things like regarding your gut. So like I know you were talking about how like in some of your posts you say like the gut with can be connected to some of like your mental like anxiety and other just mental stuff.
mm,
Kind of like can you talk about just some of the stuff you've researched or some of the things that you kind of would want people to know about what you've found out, which is like the gut connection to the mental side of things.
yeah. So there's literally a thing called the gut brain connection. That's literally what IBS kind of is. Um, when we think of IBS, or any gut disorder, we mainly just think, okay, the stomach, the intestines, and like the nasty stuff that comes with that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like I'm talking so much about anxiety and stuff, having like a lot of our serotonin that we have in our body that controls our mood, like I think it's 90% of it is in the gut.
Uh-huh.
Um, So when we're not feeling, when our gut is hurting, it's going right to our brain that we're in pain, and it can really trigger not only anxiety, but some people have really bad depression from having IBS and gut disorders, and stuff like that. So it really is a cycle of not feeling well turning into anxiety, the anxiety turning into a flare, and then the flare causing more anxiety. Like it just
Uh-huh.
keeps revolving. And so a thing we hear a lot is that IBS or the pain is all in your head. And
Yeah.
that's hard to hear, but not in a dismissive or invalidating way, but it is kind of true. The pain is incredibly real. It's
Yeah.
happening, but there is a component where you have such anxiety about your IBS and your symptoms that you could think yourself into feeling sick sometimes. So it's a really complicated thing, but it makes a lot of sense when you actually research it.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've researched a bunch of things like regarding the gut, and it is fascinating just the stuff. I know they say, I think it's like they say there's like 200 different, like 200 million different like microbiomes and stuff. Obviously, not a doctor, but
No, I
it
would believe that.
yeah, it is fascinating some of the stuff, and people wouldn't think certain diseases. I mean, for IBS, it makes a little more sense that it's kind of related to the gut. But
Yeah,
some diseases, you would not think losing hair is related to the gut, but there are many connections with it.
yeah, the gut controls a lot in
Yeah,
the body, and even if you don't have stomach issues per se, gut health is so incredibly important, like you were saying, for
yeah.
every part of your body. Like,
Have you taken any like probiotics or anything like that? Because I know there's people say take probiotics for gut stuff.
yeah, so probiotics are like a weird thing, but I've been through so many probiotics in my IBS journey. I found one that I actually thought was really helping me, that my gastro gave me. It was called Florastore, and it's actually a very like powerful probiotic. Like, he was pretty much telling me like, I don't give this to like regular people. Like,
Uh-huh.
it's for people that are really having a lot of pain. So I was taking that for a while. Honestly, I stopped taking it because I just hate taking medicine. So a little self-destructive on that part,
Yeah.
full transparency. But there are so many probiotics on the market, but you just really have to be careful of what you're taking because a lot of them don't do anything.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely, I mean, it's so easy to just like scam people with certain vitamins that it is just an issue.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, what's some of the things that kind of in the community, like people with IBS, like, what are some things that they say kind of helps them the most? Like, yeah, kind of just like, what's the biggest thing people talk about?
Sure. So I would definitely say a huge discussion in our little community is the low FODMAP diet. Like we kind of just talked about, a lot of people try it. It works for some people, it doesn't for others. Exercise, like you were saying, meditation. A lot of people do meditate and it really helps them. And a lot of people take medications,
Uh-huh.
depressants, or there are some medications for IBS and stuff like that, but I would say those are probably the most common.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now, I mean, you've been living with it for pretty much 15 years now. So, like, what's something that you kind of wish you knew year one that having 15 years of experience of living with IBS that you kind of wish you knew back then?
Sure. I would say there's probably two main things. One is that IBS, at least in my case, comes in waves. So I'll have really low lows where I'm super sick for days, weeks, months, even maybe a year. I'm not getting out of bed. I'm not going out a lot. My anxiety is so bad. My pain is horrible. But it will come back up to a high of I'll feel great for days, weeks, months, a year. And I'll be able to really like live my life again and like fall in love with my life again. So I would definitely say that's one, just like ride the waves of it. The second one is that people are much more understanding of it than you think.
Uh,
And, you know, with any illness, I'm sure, or any type of condition or disorder, and I'm sure you can relate to this too. Like, we feel very embarrassed by these things and like shameful, and we're mad at ourselves that like, why me? Why do I have this? And
yeah,
that no one's gonna relate to us, but that's just, it's not true. We might think everyone's going to think we're weird or we're gross or whatever. They don't. There will be a few bad seeds
yeah,
that will make you feel insecure or whatever, but the majority of people will want to learn or listen or just make you comfortable.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I feel like it's the same thing where it's like you internally you think it's way worse than it actually is. And I mean, what I've learned most is that people really just don't care. They only care
yeah,
about themselves. So it's like once you like realize that, I feel like for me that was like a big turning point because I used to just worry so much about just really what other people would think.
absolutely.
And yeah, once I kind of realized that people don't care, it was like a weight off my shoulder pretty much.
Absolutely. And I would say the other thing too is that I felt so alone when I
Uh-huh.
was going through it. Um, and there are just so many other people that not only will like accept you for it, but that are going through it with you. They know the pain. They know exactly what you're going through, what you're thinking. So that would be another one. Just
Yeah.
you're not alone in whatever type of crap you're dealing with. You're not alone.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm going to wrap it up, but I want to just ask like one more question. That's kind of just like a follow-up of what we were just talking about. And it's like, what's something that you would just kind of tell other people living with IBS or someone who just got diagnosed? Kind of just like a last word of advice for someone living with it.
Sure. So, in addition to, like you said, everything we just talked about, the next thing I would say is to just keep advocating for yourself. Um, IBS is a hard, all conditions are hard to live with, but in my experience with IBS, it's been hard because a lot of people will want to invalidate you and your symptoms. This includes your parents, your siblings, your boyfriends, your girlfriends, your friends, and especially doctors. I have been to so many doctors
Hmm.
that just invalidate everything you go through. Keep advocating for yourself. Your pain is real and you deserve great health care and treatment, and people that take you seriously. So don't doubt yourself, don't invalidate yourself, and don't let others invalidate you.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I feel like people just tend to minimize things. They kind of just don't think you're actually dealing with stuff. And it definitely is tough.
Absolutely.
So I thank you for doing this. I mean, this was great. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope other people listen. They learned, and again, everyone check out Christine's page at MyIBSLife. It's honestly just amazing. It's just memes on memes on memes,
Thank you so much.
of course. So on that note, I'll end it. But thank you again,
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
everyone have a good one.
All right, bye.
Bye.